What is going on, guys? Ultimate Battles here. And today's video is a little bit different. I wanted to talk about my love for horror, and I feel like for the most part, my story and how I got into horror and just basically like the movies that sort of define my love for the genre. I feel like for the most part, maybe this could be like a little guide for somebody that hasn't watched horror yet. If you're thinking about getting into the genre, maybe this story could kind of help y'all guide you through it, right? Because when I first started watching horror, I basically didn't know where to start, and I kind of got freaked out. So let's get into it. Basically for the majority of my life, I always avoided horror. I always thought it was super creepy and scary, and I was like, dude, like fuck that, dude. I'm not gonna be watching shit that I can't sleep afterwards. And I had certain moments with horror for the most part when I was younger, and not even really like there was a show on Animal Planet called Lost Tapes, and that wasn't really like horror in a sense. It was more like found footage that was like recreated to kind of like tell these stories about these hidden like folklore like animals, right? I don't even know what the fuck the show's about, basically, but basically like that was the show premise. And I remember like seeing that show as a kid and like being so terrified afterwards, because I would see it late with my cousins and I would try to go to bed and I couldn't sleep, dude. Like I was fucking freaking out. So that's probably like one of the earliest memories. I remember like being scared of like after watching something, and for the most part, I wouldn't really say it was until like 2021, which is like about 5 years ago, so not that long ago, where I actually got into it. And the way I got into it was because of just in kind of like the fall of 2021. I was really like watching a bunch of different YouTube and stuff like that. I was trying to get into like more movies at that time, right? Because for the most part, I kind of was like really like closed-minded. I was kind of like just watching the same shit pretty much when I wanted to switch it up, right? And during this time, Halloween Kills was about to come out, and I remember being super hyped for that movie. I was like, at that time, I was like, dude, like that movie looks like it's gonna be pretty cool. And I remember like wanting to see Halloween, the 2018 Halloween, for the first time. And I remember I was so scared to watch it, dude. I was scared. I was like, dude, like, because keep in mind, guys, I had never watched a scary movie up to this point. Like an actual like me sitting there and like watching it, like I thought it was gonna be scary. I thought I was gonna sleep. But whenever I watched Halloween 2018 for the first time, I like genuinely fell in love with it. I was like, dude, that was such a fun movie. From that point on, I watched the original Halloween, and I watched like the Scream movies, and I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, and I saw Hellraiser. Those are basically the movies I remember watching for like the first time. And I remember just like really liking horror at that point. I remember thought it was super fun, it was entertaining, and that was my first introduction to horror, right? And basically like throughout the years, in 2022 and 2023, I kind of like phased away from it. I didn't watch as much as 2021, but was it till 2024 I kind of got back into it again. And the movie that I remember watching, dude, I remember this was about 2024 in the summer, right? Watching A Quiet Place, that was another kind of like horror movie I watched for the first time. It was super fun to watch. But the movie that like really freaked me out for the first time was the original Exorcist. Now I'm gonna do a whole separate video on Exorcist. I don't want to talk about it too much, but just quickly, that was a movie that terrified me as a little kid. I heard so many fucking rumors about that movie and how it was truly terrifying, and it was so over the top, and it was violent, grotesque, and it was wrong. And I was like, dude, like my mom didn't allow me to watch it. Like you weren't able to watch this movie. And even though I grew up like I didn't grow up during the 80s or 90s or anything. I grew up in like the 2010s. So like even then, like having this aura about this movie still when I was growing up, like it was kind of creepy. I knew that this was a movie that like I was not allowed to see. I thought it was the scariest movie of all time, and I was super terrified of it. But it goes back to that morbid curiosity. I was so obsessed with it at the time. I was like, dude, like I want to see this fucking movie, dude. And when I saw it for the first time, I was so blown away. To this day, it's the only Letterboxd review that I've given 5 stars and I did not heart it. That basically means that like every 90% that I give that's like 5 stars, basically I've always hearted the movie. I always loved it. I always liked it, right? It was it's one of my favorites now, but just I did not like, for me to not give it a heart but still give it a high score, it goes to show like how much that movie impacted me. And it kind of made me more invested into other horror movies, and for that, in that following October, I started watching like more movies. I saw Terrifier 2 for the first time. Super fucking creepy and disturbing, and I just thought like, dude, like I was like, what the fuck, dude, like that was so creepy. Terrifier 2 is the only horror movie ever that I had to turn off and come back to it, because it was just too much. After they killed poor Allie in her bedroom, dude, like it fucking truly just like that was so violent. I was not expecting that in any way whatsoever. So that was definitely a scary moment for me as a horror fan. That was kind of the Exorcist definitely creeped me out, definitely the crucifix scene in that movie. That was like the first scene where I really got disturbed, like genuinely as a horror fan. I was like, dude, like that really scared me. And also just like, I'll see that Allie's bedroom scene in Terrifier 2. That was the first time I really got truly like disturbed. I kind of got exposed to like the dark side of like horror movies, I guess. Which isn't really the dark side. There's a whole fucking like iceberg about like disturbing movies. That's like a whole nother rabbit hole that I haven't watching those movies personally, but I know the lore behind a lot of them, and it's fucking insane. But basically, you know, from 2024 on, I kind of got into horror more. I ended up watching more. Last year in the summer, I watched Midsummer. I saw Silence of the Lambs, and then that's when I kind of started feel like, you know, like I'm really getting into this more and more. And last year in October, you know, when I started this channel in October, you know, now I've been doing YouTube for a little bit, but when I kind of rebranded the channel to a movie channel, October was the first month I dedicated a whole month to only horror movies. And I saw a lot of these horror movies for the first time. I saw the Blair Witch Project, I saw Saw, I saw like Psycho, and Sinister was a movie that I watched for the first time, which I'm kind of surprised I did, just because I don't have that much like horror knowledge under my belt at that time. So I was really pushing my limits as far as like horror, you know. I was really trying to watch a lot of different shit. And that was one of the craziest months for movies I ever had, and it was definitely one of my favorite months at Letterboxd looking back at it. But what truly scares you, dude, is like possession movies. I feel like it's something just about like a little girl being a demon and stuff and getting possessed. It's just creepy to me. I know people nowadays are not super religious, but just for me personally, you know, it's still scary, dude, and I don't like it, man. I feel like there's movies like The Ring or like The Exorcist of Emily Rose, or like even the first Exorcist I didn't watch for so long. There's movies like that, even The Conjuring and Insidious, which I'm gonna try to watch this October, which I'm kind of scared about, but I know I'm gonna push myself to like just get over that fear, you know, because I feel like for the most part I'm pretty already knowledgeable about horror a little bit, so I'm definitely ready to take a dive into like those other darker movies, you know. Just for me, it's darker. I feel like for some of y'all, like y'all probably watch like The Conjuring before going to bed, right? It doesn't bother you. But for me, like anything that's like possession movies or like jump scares all the fucking time and demons and shit, like dude, like it's something that just scares me about it. It just feels like primal, I guess, to me, and that makes sense. I don't fucking know, you know. For me, like body horror doesn't like scare me a lot, but when it comes to possession stuff like that, like it just creeps me out, dude. Like something about like demons and shit like that, like it's fucking creepy to me, dude. And I, you know, for the most part, like I said, I really love horror. This video is just really talking about like the way I kind of got into it. And as far as horror games go, I played Dead by Daylight a lot. I haven't really played anything else, you know, but I definitely like horror, you know. I think horror is such a fun genre. It's the only genre that has no rules for the most part. And I feel like you definitely feel that when you watch horror. And that's what I love about this genre, man. It's so entertaining. There's no rules. It doesn't have to follow like all the structure that like a drama or like an action movie does. Like you could really do a bunch of stuff with horror. And that's one of the reasons why it's probably my favorite genre right now, you know. It's so fun to watch. And you know, as much as I hated seeing Pazuzu's face in The Extras pop out every now and then, like I just think I'm looking at it as creatively as I can. Like it's so many techniques, man. I've seen so many horror movies at this point where it's like I just really love like when a horror movie is really well done, you know. And just to name some of my favorites off the top, you know, I love The Shining, I love The Substance, obviously the original Halloween, the original Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, Silence of the Lambs is another one, Get Out is a fucking classic, you know. I've basically seen all the top horror movies at this point, so for the most part, you know, I really enjoy this genre. I think it's such a well done genre and it's so fascinating to watch. And you know, for anybody that's like wants to get into horror, I would say just kind of like start off small, you know. Don't jump in straight to the deep end. Don't watch some crazy ass shit. I feel like if you want to really get into the genre, definitely start with something that's tame, you know. Maybe watch like the original Psycho, or you know, watch old horror movies from like the 50s and kind of work your way up, because I feel like if you jump straight into the deep end, you know, I feel like it's definitely just scary, you know. You definitely don't want to get freaked out by it. And I think that's a lot of reasons why people don't like horror, is that they're scared of it. I feel like it's subjective. Like I said, what scares me might not scare you, but I feel like for the most part, dude, like horror, if you really appreciate the genre for what it is so fun, and it's such a definitely the genre that excites me, entertains me the most, because it's dark, it's edgy, you know. It makes you kind of like think about shit a lot. And I think it's, we talk about like movie breakdowns, I probably watch more horror movie breakdowns than like any other genre in movies. So that's basically all I have to say, guys. You know, horror is a great genre, and like I said, if you're trying to get into it, you know, I feel like just start off, like I said, look into movies that are not as scary. Just search them up and just kind of like do your research on it. And you know, I feel like for the most part, I don't watch like super creepy shit right before bed. Like I'm not watching The Exorcist right before bed too. Like fuck that, right? And there's people that don't think The Exorcist is scary, you know, but they might find something else more scary than that, you know. So what scares you might not scare me, you know, and vice versa. So that's overall though, it is a great genre. And yeah, I love horror, man. I have nothing else to say, guys, you know. Yeah, peace.